Live from the MC. Welcome back to Casual Supremacy with the Dykeman Podcast, talking it out, talking about the important things. It is March 11th, 2024. I hope everyone's just doing good and living their lives. And we got to talk about what's going on in New York City right now. We got to talk about the subways, you know, especially us, because we're the actual people who take the subway. You know, I live in Inwood. This is the last stop on the A train all the way uptown. I work in 14th Street, and I also work in the financial district. So I feel like every day I basically transverse all of Manhattan. You know, I've seen a lot of coverage going on about, Governor Hochul's 5-point safety plan. And, you know, I honestly just think that you can obviously tell that she is not from New York City. You know, she's a New Yorker, but she's from Buffalo, and it's not the same. She basically, you know, is from Canada. So just want to kind of discuss that with you guys and see what you think. I know it's gotten a lot of press, but I feel like real New Yorkers aren't the ones talking about it. You know, like you guys are taking the subway. So I'm going to ask you as an expert witness to tell me, you know, what your experiences are too. I know that you drive, so you don't really do that too much.
No, but they have the Navy in the subway.
Dude, they have the National Guard. You know, we can see
National
what's going
Guard.
on. So let's take it from the top. You know, so the governor, you know, there was a spike, 45% crime spike in January. So it must be an election cycle. It must be time for them to be elected again, because
2024, baby.
Exactly. And that's every time that these guys are up for re-election, all of a sudden there are all these crises. There's all these like fear and mongering. And, you know, we've talked about this even with the migrant crisis. It's all that. Everything's a crisis. And what we need are more soldiers, more guns. So what she proposed, and I know you probably heard this, 750 National Guards, additional 250 state police, right? Which is one thing. First of all, police officers themselves have been saying that this is a huge mistake. Why? Because the National Guard isn't actually trained to like arrest people. Like they have a whole different, you know, like that's why, you know, they don't send the military to police their own citizens, because it's not like, that's not what their whole point is. You know, like so this whole idea that you're going to take these soldiers with their M16s, stand them in front of the A train, open up your bag, like you're gonna put the toolie in your bag, and you know what I'm saying. And then when you're ready to rob someone, you're gonna pull it out your bag, out your briefcase, and it's a whole mental thing that you have to think about. These people are thinking that, you know, people. I don't know what you think is happening, but besides that, before even, you know, the governor did this, you know, she, you know, Mayor Club Promoter Adams, you know, added 1,000 additional police to the subway, costing New York City taxpayers $150 million in overtime, to what amounted to $104,000 worth of fare evasion. So to stop $104,000 worth of people jumping turnstiles, they paid $150 million. So you got to just think about that. Like really, I mean, it's a lot of money.
Numbers not adding up.
It's not adding up. And first of all, my first question is, why is it that these cops can't police the police station like during their regular hours? Like, you know, there's 38,000. The NYPD is like as big as like some standing armies. You know, like literally we have like the NYPD is its own army. So imagine them sending in this additional 700. Like you really needed, after your 38,000 cops that we pay for, you know, like you, and then not only that, but they can't do this like during their regular hours, that they're being paid this much more in overtime. You know, and again, it goes back to Club Promoter, to Captain Adams. You know, I've said it before. I think he's a plant, and I don't mean that like. I mean, I'm talking about, you know, again, the reason people like him, 20 years, or the people he was elected 20 years as police captain NYPD, all good. You know, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but what I'm saying is that that's how he thinks. It's like, let's, you know, more weapons, more bars, more jail time. That's gonna fix everything, and I think people are starting to realize that like, maybe we could do better. We could think about things outside the box a little bit. I personally like the police there. And again, I'm on the subway all day, every day. You know, I'm taking about an hour ride both ways. I don't even remember the last time that I really witnessed a crime on the subway. You know, like I was trying to think about when's the last time I saw someone get robbed, someone get beat up, someone like shot, stabbed. I'm like 41 years old, and I'm thinking to myself, I think one time I saw someone like get snatched, like they snatched a person. You heard some, like on 42nd Street. Besides that, the only thing I'm trying to avoid on the subway are the smells. Like I'm just trying to keep that off of me, off my clothes, and kind of the crazies. And the police don't really, and if you watch them interact, they don't really mess with those people. They'll like talk to them like, hey, are you all right? Like, but they don't really engage. I was on 96th Street waiting for the one the other day. There's two cops standing there, and I would say like maybe 100 feet away, like a little bit farther down, there's a guy smoking a joint on the platform. And these cops didn't even look at him. And I'm like, every time I look, they're just standing there on their phones or talking to each other. Like I feel like I'm glad that they're there, and I'm not trying to like diss or say like, like there's nothing, but it's like, how are you also taking this extra 150 million in overtime? And then now you're telling us that it's so unsafe that you're going to send in the military and to search our bags just in case I slipped a toolie into my bag as I'm trying to go to 14th Street. To like, you really are creating something that an environment that's really not necessary. And it's already stressful enough being on the subway and spending, especially rush hours. I'm a 9-to-5er. So imagine you're on the train during the peak hours, and all you really want is someone there kind of, like looking around and walking around, patrolling, walking between the cars. They don't have to, but like for you to be standing there, think that it's safer to stand at the, in front and try to like look in my bag with your M16. I don't know. I have questions about that. And I have questions for you guys, because I really, this is open to the audience. Again, I feel like most of the document podcasts are real New Yorkers or people, it's we're not local, but it's good to at least that we're talking about local things from actual New Yorkers, and I've been getting a lot of, I've been following this a lot online, and I it's so funny because I get a lot of, I comment a lot on people's things. It's fun, I'll get like 800 likes or random things. And I joked about, someone was saying that, oh, well, you're the worst of it. You're the reason, someone said that to me, like responding to my comment, like you're the reason that they need, these extra, and I was like, basically, you're the reason, you don't know anything about New York. I can tell that you're not from New York City. You're not on the subways. You're not riding every day. I don't know when the last time you felt like, hey, this is something that is getting out of control. This whole idea that crime is becoming, unbearable, or it's. I think especially New York City, you get a lot of flack because like for the rest of America, they look at New York City as this like. This hell place, this like, it's like the liberal like agenda, whatever you want to look at it. Like, they look at it and be like, look what's happening over there. California, New York City, this is the places that they hate. These are the places that they focus on, all their news. So now you have our politicians saying that, oh, it's not safe on the subway. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure that there are cases where it is and it isn't.
Of course, Jay.
Of course.
Like,
no, of course.
One can make the argument that the one train and the A train uptown, for the most part, is pretty safe.
Okay.
Once you hop over to that green line,
okay,
story changes. Especially, also the orange into Brooklyn.
Okay, you get Brooklyn, Bronx. I mean, I'm sure. Listen, I've seen some things
like
where
Manhattan,
someone was shot.
The A and the one.
Absolutely.
Yes, but
absolutely, no, and I truly get that. But where are they putting these soldiers? At 42nd Street, Times Square, or like they're not putting them in the Bronx. They're not putting them in Brooklyn. I mean, they're putting some, but the main places they're putting them are like Grand Central, 14th Street. I see them there all the time. They put it in a very,
the
and
National
again,
Guard and
they're
the NYPD, they're putting everybody else.
And state troopers, they're being spread out. And listen, and you're right. It is up to, and again, this is more of a discussion. I think it's overkill, but I'm just one opinion. And I'm glad it's a true thing. There's a lot of people who think, hey, no, that's not. And they want their bag searched. But understand, it's a slippery slope. And once you start letting people just go into your bag, seeing what's going on. And again, it's this whole idea that like, these crazy people are walking around with it in their book bags. And I don't know. I mean, I've seen people maybe pushed, but when was the last time someone got shot? Like maybe it's happened. I'm not saying that's never happened, but like, is it something that is it something that is a like raging out of control is my question, that needs all this extra, besides like the 40,000, 38,000 NYPD, you tell me that they can't handle what's going on?
Let me ask you this.
Please.
if it prevents a massacre.
But that's a hypothetical, and not only that, but like, okay, you saw the shooting that happened after the Super Bowl, the Kansas City, whatever it is, the like 10, they killed one person in the parade at Kansas City. How many cops do you think were at the parade for the Kansas City Chiefs? How many cops do you think were there, and how many people got shot? My point is that you think that because you put more people there, or you put more but when it happens, and when someone decides that they're going to do something, and yes, I'm sure it's a deterrent, but it doesn't really, like they after Columbine and all that, they start putting all these extra, police in schools, but it hasn't really stopped, school shootings. I'm just saying that there's got to be other ways to look at these things, and I just think that there is something political about like this fear mongering, because before that, Adams was saying that everything was down, crime was down. He's posted it. He's like, oh, this is down. New York City wasn't, but now it's 45% up, and we need, the strategies. We need the governor to come in. We need state troopers. We need the National Guard. I mean, hey, listen, man. And I'm just saying, there's a cost to it, and we're gonna slowly, it's an effect.
Paying for it, basically.
It's a cause and effect. And again, this is just something to think about. And I'm just gonna say it, okay? I miss Governor Andrew Cuomo. Bring back Cuomo. I don't care. Andy and his nipple rings, all of it. I gotta say that I miss Andy. He legalized weed in New York City at the end of it, which again is just more about like making it a crime. But as he left, it's like, all we've really gotten is, are you afraid yet? Do you feel safer? As a New Yorker, do you think that, what are your opinions? Tell me what you're thinking about, and what if you're riding the subway, and if it's something that you do every day. I really want to know if you think that the National Guard is something, and I would love to hear it in the comments. I'm all about the comments. If you guys want to get it, let's talk about it. And I'm totally down with that. But I do think that because it's an election cycle, it's something that we have to really look at, because I think they start creating things, and understand is that you give up freedoms, and then they don't get them back. You still have to take off your shoes to get on an airplane. There was one dude one time who was like a shoe bomber in like 2001 or something, like 20 years ago. You still got to pop your shoes off at LaGuardia. It's like one of those things where it's like, if it makes you feel safer, sure. But like, I don't know. But understand is that you're slowly giving up these freedoms, or you're giving up these like inconveniences. And it's like, okay, like, is there a shoe bomb? Maybe it is something, but then they, I'm just saying that we have to explore what we gain, what we lose, and keep that in mind, because people are just going to keep telling you to be more afraid, and that New York City is more and more dangerous. And I get it, but it's always been dangerous. We've lived here our entire lives. It's not for everybody,
I'm glad that you're opening up the conversation, right? So all I hear is that police department got funding, or the city got funding, whoever it is got the funding, and why not use it? Let's just spread all the military, NYPD, pay everybody, and let Americans get paid. Because who you think is in the military? Who you think is NYPD?
So you think that, okay, pay them to search your bags, and that's
no, because we have the funding. If you have the funding, and you just said it, they're not doing anything.
But we're paying them not. While they're there, they're being paid. Well, exactly. My point is like, so I'm just saying that again. It's like, if you think about your tax dollars, like, I mean, that's a kind of very interesting. That's a very interesting.
Oversimplifying it.
I think a little bit. I mean, I'm just saying like, we got the
oversimplifying it.
We already paid for it, but so
we keeping the supremacy casual.
You are the DP. Listen. I want to hear people's opinions. I want to hear your opinion. It's not even like that. I'm just saying that what could $150 million, what else could you have done with that money? And I'm just saying that they're already funded. And the $150 extra million was overtime. You know what I'm saying? That's not even their regular salaries. That's like an extra added on bill that we as New Yorkers, I'm just saying we pay for that. And do you think that you're getting your money's worth? That's only my question, but it seems like, I get it. You're down with that?
I have my own perspective and point of view.
You should. You should. you know? And so I'm always just kind of keeping that in mind. There's been a lot of opinions on it. I do think, listen, you're riding around in the Bronx at 5 a.m. taking the D train. Yeah, man, it's you're putting yourself in danger. You're putting yourself at risk. It is, but my whole point is that who's there at 5 a.m. and in you know the subway in the Bronx? Like, is it something that's not where they're putting these stations to check people's bags? You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, it's occasional because I know they're kind of just at least putting it in people's minds that, hey, there could be someone there waiting for you, which I understand, that kind of deterrent. Like, hey,
that's a great
you know
point.
what I'm saying? See what's going on. My point is, if you leave a bag, but if you let's say a gun, right? Who puts it in their bag? It means I have a better chance of getting a gun in the subway by just putting it in my lap.
Great point, because if I'm going determined, I'm not gonna wait to. I'm
not putting it in the bag. I'm not gonna all of a sudden be like, oh, let me zip up my open up my JanSport and pull out the, it's just crazy to think that way. You're going to have it on you somewhere. You're going to have it accessible to you, and you're not searching people like that. I mean, if that would almost make more sense. But, like, again, it's a slippery slope. Again, I think that's a good idea.
There's a lot of hidden metal detectors as well.
Where?
Because I know usually the airport has them.
Oh, sure. Listen, the airport now, I was in LaGuardia recently. They had the bomb sniffing dogs now that just came out in LaGuardia. I saw that a lot in the South and Atlanta. If you go like down to South, like you go to the airport and they literally have like every like 10 steps. They're like, please, if you have a firearm, turn around, turn around. It's crazy. America's a wild place. And it's crazier because like the rest of America, like having a gun is like, yo, it's all good.
They probably have that all around the subway.
What?
The metal detectors.
Who has
like hidden metal detectors to detect guns?
But who's in front of the metal detector? Who's stopping them? Is it like a active? Are they like what do you mean?
It's hidden metal detectors, bro. You've never experienced this? I'll give you an example. So in DR, actually, we were in Santiago.
Okay.
We went to pick up my brother. We were over there. Long story short, we go to the cafeteria. Next thing you know, 2 officers come by and they talk to my father. They're like, "Oh, sir, can you come with us real quick? We noticed that you have a gun on you."
Okay, and is you saying that happens that in New York? Like, has that ever? I mean, I've never heard of that.
Well, not in New York, but if they have it in DR, you don't think they would have it here?
But I don't know. I don't think there is. I mean, I've never heard of anyone, getting pulled over or stopped, be like, hey, I think you have a gun. Like, if you've heard of that, you let me know. But like,
well, if they don't have it here, I would say that's a pretty good idea. Just metal detectors, coming out of the subway.
But like everything is metal. Your phone's metal. Your keys are metal. Your laptop is metal. Like, like if you were trying to stop every single person who had metal on them, like, I mean, it would be a real long day on the subway for whoever is like, holding that metal detector. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you're seeing like old like science fiction, like Total Recall, where they walk by and you see, like you need some sci-fi.
Oh, he got the Thule. Got him.
You see the skeleton. It's like, listen.
Actually, that is a great idea. Some AI is like, oh no, he got the Thule metal. Got him.
Listen, we're not there yet.
Let the dogs loose on him.
I don't know if we're there
Bro,
yet.
we have it on video games. You're gonna tell me we don't have it in real life?
We don't. What are you talking about? I just heard you Total Recall. It's science fiction. What are you talking about? I'm sure that's a good idea, but we don't have the technology. We don't have that yet. You know what I'm saying? Like that's why it's science fiction. Like it's something where we're imagining what's gonna happen in the future.
I think we should definitely have some goggles that could see through and that could see metal, and then you could just shape of a Thule.
You know what?
You got the Thule.
You know what that would probably cost? The $150 million in overtime.
Hey man, at least you start getting some results.
Exactly. That's my point. Is like that makes sense. Like, hey, if you wanted to invest in like a system that like scans people for like if we could do that, and I'm sure that we probably could. Okay, like
It's a pretty good idea, man.
It's a good idea, but that'd be a better idea to spend $150 million than overtime for like these extra 1,000 police officers. And I get it, they're all
Hey
NYPD,
man, those officers need to take care of their families.
Yeah, they need the overtime, and it's crazy.
Overtime.
They need, listen, a lot of those the detectives, I do affordable housing, and I've seen some of their, they're making 150, 125, with overtime and all that, and a lot of these city workers are doing that. Like imagine like when we used to snow here, like the sanitation workers, like some of those dudes in the winter, like it's crazy the overtime. But I'm just saying, it's a whole game, there's a whole scam to all these different city things and being able to get the city money. I'm just saying, do you think that this extra $150 million, and again, just on the overtime for the police, that's maybe I'm just harping on that, but I also think that the idea of bringing in these additional, people who are just not trained for this, they don't train the National Guard to police the subway. Like what do you imagine, one of these guys, what would you do with the M16 on the subway? Like what could they be doing? You know what I'm saying? Like imagine firing that thing on a platform or like at a turnstile to stop someone. It's just impractical. It's just one of those things that's there to look at, but like I don't really know if.
Hey man, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready.
But again, man, we put more police, we put more cops everywhere, but I'm just saying, has that stopped anything? Has that stopped shootings?
Maybe it has, and that's why we don't know.
I guess, but there's still a lot going on. And a lot of it's not happening in New York. Again, my whole point, a lot of these shootings, all these things are happening in the South, all these places that think that we're the degenerates. It's happening there because like they have no gun laws. They don't have like New York City, how hard it is to get a gun. I talk about this all the time. We have a war on drugs. We have a war on terror. But where don't we have a war on illegal guns in this country? You know what I'm saying? Because like they're not
because of the Second Amendment.
But illegal guns. My point is, let's say New York City, again, in New York City, it's very hard to get a legal gun. But we don't talk about how a lot of these conflicts, a lot of these weapons, where are they coming from? Like who's bringing them in? They don't make Glocks. It is what it is. Tell me.
Did you see Biden address the nation?
Yeah, go ahead.
He literally said it. He's like, well, they need our help, but we're not sending soldiers. We're just gonna sell them guns.
Yeah, that's what we do.
Yeah.
No, I get it. Listen, it's a huge business, and actually kind of leads into what I want to discuss. Second, I want to pull in New York City, but really, I want to talk about something that I've been avoiding for a long time, and I'd say maybe 5-6 months now, and I started Casual Supremacy as a nonprofit to discuss about again the ways that like things are kind of casually passed over people and power in general. And, especially as a New Yorker, not as a New Yorker, but as a professional, as a real estate agent, I have avoided talking about the Middle East conflict. And actually I've been called out on it on social media a few times. Like they're like, why haven't you talked about this at all? What's going on in Gaza? What's going on in Palestine? For a long time, I just thought, it's not my business. There's nothing I can do about this. This is just going to cause issues. This is just one of those hot button topics. But that's why I feel like Casual Supremacy has to discuss it one way or another. And something that we just have to discuss. And I'm sure that we are all sick and tired of hearing about it, or not sick and tired of it. I'm sure going through it is even obviously worse, depending on what side you're up against or what you believe in. But there's just some things that we have to discuss. And the first thing I have to say about it is that no matter what anyone wants to say, what's going on in the Middle East, what's happening in Palestine, what's happening is not a religious conflict. So either way, let's wrap this up. Again, thank you guys for sitting down with us and listening. But again, I want to finish off this episode with a topic that I've avoided for a long time because, it gets you hurt. Again, I'm a professional. I work a 9 to 5. I work in real estate. And obviously what I'm talking about is what's happening in the Middle East, what's happening in Gaza, what's happening in Palestine, what's happening in Israel. You all right there? Okay.
Yeah,
just making sure. Okay.
Yeah,
All right. Just drink a little water.
I'm good.
So, but either way, what I want to say, because there's been a lot of news coverage about this, is that, and what really inspired me to talk about this were people, Jewish people who I knew who were basically telling me like they didn't agree with what's going on. And what I really want to say is that this isn't about religion. And I think you really have to think about the history of humanity. And I actually have a little reading. I'm going to recommend for you guys, a book called Exterminate All the Brutes. There's actually an HBO special, and I think I've talked about it before here. And we have a long-standing history of, killing the natives, America in particular, but we live in a new day and age where things are being on TV, they're on the internet, they're on social media. So we're seeing things now live that's been going on through all of human history. I was saying one of my favorite TV shows is a show called Fargo, and the first season, Billy Bob Thornton, he's talking to one of the characters, and he goes, we used to all be gorillas. We were once all gorillas. There was a time in humanity where, all you had was what you could hold and what you could defend. And all of human history has been this terrible kind of land grab. And the only issue I have particularly with this conflict, because conflict is part of human history, is that we've turned it into this like religious, anti-religious thing, which really just about money, power, and land. And it's the same old conflict that's been happening. And I'm not saying I would respect it if people talked about it that way, but when they turn it into this religious thing, it really, you're just like kind of missing like it's just like this layer, this story that people put over it. But what's really happening is just kind of the same old thing, And we talked about this before when we were our earlier segment about the weapons and who's selling the weapons. It's the United States. It's funny because now the United States is selling the weapons to Israel, and they're also, because it's an election cycle, now Biden, what's he got to do, Papa? He's got to now he's sending aids. I don't know if you saw the story, but the last aid package, I think BBC reported, it dropped on people and it killed like 5 or 6 people because now think about how ridiculous that is to be killed by the aid. They're dropping it on people. You could look the story up that happened today, or they reported it, but just how ridiculous things are getting. We're building, and honestly, it's unfortunate for the people of Palestine because they don't have a military. They don't have, they've literally been in this open, whatever you want to call it, open air prison for a long time. This is like a 70-year conflict. It's also very touchy to talk about because again, as soon as you say it, it's like, oh, you're anti-Semitic, you're out of this, but Zionism and this land grab, these things have nothing really to do with religion. They use religion to kind of to cover it up and be like, well, God gave us this and he chose this for us. And I get it, but you understand that they're already trying to sell the real estate where they're bombing. I don't know if you've heard about this, but it's only open to Jewish buyers, but they are already they're basically putting diagrams of where they blew up a house and they're putting a projection of oh, this is where your new condo is going to be. I'm just saying that it's all about land. It's all about money.
It's all about land.
I'm not, there's nothing else. Any other thing that you want this to be about is not that. And I had to say that as someone who runs this podcast. We talk about, again, casual supremacy as an organization. I avoided for a long time. I apologize because honestly, it scared the shit out of me. To be 100% honest, I just didn't want to be labeled anything.
Why now?
Why now? Because again, tens of thousands of people have been killed. Whatever way you want to look at it and seeing what's going on, it's a humanitarian crisis. People just starving. They have these acronyms for kids without basically parents. I forgot what the actual acronym is. It's they have all these children with no other family, and literally doctors are just they're just these children, and so it's getting harder and harder to avoid it. It's harder and harder to not think about it. It's harder and harder not to, as the images keep piling up. I mean, you heard about the U.S. soldier, Aaron Bushnell, who literally lit himself on fire in front of, and to be honest, that was another big thing that, I don't know if you've watched that video, but it's really hard to digest. You know what I'm talking about? So a U.S. soldier, airman from the Air Force, I think he was 22 or 25 years old. He went, there's a full video, Aaron Bushnell, white kid, took a canister of gasoline in his full uniform, poured it on top of himself.
What?
You need to, yeah, but that's
sounds like mental illness.
Maybe it's mental illness, but he decided that he wanted to take a stand for something, and I don't know. But my point is, where did that come from? What
did he make any statement prior to doing that?
Yeah, the statement was about like I can no longer stand by and say nothing and do nothing. And he lit himself on fire. I mean, listen, there's one thing to kill yourself and there's one thing to shoot yourself in the head, but like to stand there, like literally walked up real casually, like real casual, took a thermos, like one of these things. Watch the video, man. I mean, I can't believe you haven't seen it. But it'll affect you, and it affects how again these images are affecting a lot of people throughout the world, and something that I think that we can't keep avoiding. And that was actually a really big reason, or big aha moment or something. And yes, you could call it that he was mentally ill, but like that's a big conviction.
Yeah,
and
bro, that doesn't sound.
Well, listen, if you watch him and see, I mean, you haven't seen it. So I mean, it's kind of weird, but you have to he very casually and very calmly explains his situation, walks up, douses himself and lights himself on fire. Whether you want to call it mental illness, whatever it is, he screams "Free Palestine" until he dies. And the crazy thing about the video is that the police are standing there. He's on fire and they're pointing their guns at him. And the EMTs are like, we don't need guns. We need a fire extinguisher. And again, this is where it comes back to what's saying in New York City. Do we need just more people pointing guns at people, or do we need to actually think about these things and what is going on in the world? And yes, it could be mental illness, whatever way you want to call it. It's just something I think Casual Supremacy we had to talk about. Dykeman Podcast. You should check out that video. It actually, to be honest, you maybe don't want to, but there are different versions of it that don't go into detail. But he's become like a hero of Palestine. They naming streets after him. It's just a huge sacrifice, whatever way you want to look at it, mental illness, whatever it is. He took a stand. He said his piece, and he went. I mean,
when you first presented it, I thought he just did the action, but now that you're telling me that there's an actual,
the whole thing. He screams "Free Palestine" to the very end. He's like, he's screaming, and it's the audio itself.
That's clearly a stand.
Yeah, he made a clear stand, and I think that then it kind of, not saying it gave me the courage to talk about it, but it made me realize, what, man, this is something that's really happening. Tens of thousands of people at this point are dying, and now we're trying to drop aid in. So I don't know if you saw another video that they had today, but they're dropping them into the water right outside. So the people are trying to swim out. They're starving. So they're dropping it off the water, but they're not again, because they're airdropping it. They can't control where it kind of lands because the wind, it's like these parachutes. And so people are trying to go out there and they're dying, trying to get these aid boxes. And it's landing on people and it's killing people. And it's just crazy because, again, at the same time, we won't really call for a ceasefire, or we won't do official. I don't know if you saw the Kamala Harris video where she's like, we're going to call for a ceasefire. And everyone starts clapping. And then she's like, for 6 weeks, and Hamas has to sign it. Everyone it's you can literally hear the whole room go, But and honestly, I don't even think that they would even want the ceasefire right now. America is so gung ho for Israel that the only reason that this is happening right now is because Biden's trying to get elected in November, and he's pissing off a lot of people, and he's starting to see it, and he's starting to be like, oh no, now you see it, he's saying it more and more often. But I thought that, again, Casual Supremacy, because really that this is about, check out Exterminate All the Brutes. Check out, there's an HBO series on it. It's all about, again, we've done this time and time throughout human history. We kill the people who can't really defend themselves, and and we find a reason, when we call them whatever we want to call them, insurgents, savages. There's all kinds of different words. We're basically just dehumanizing people and making them less than what they really are, and less than human, or calling them whatever, criminals, and they're all kinds of heathen. Whatever way it is, it's we're above you and we deserve this. But it's always about the land. It's always about the money. It's the same thing, and that's what we have to keep in mind. That's all that's happening, is the same old thing, and it's not about religion, in my opinion. And that's my piece. So thank you again for listening to me for a little bit.
Well said. Well said.
Thank you very much. But something that definitely has been hanging heavier and heavier in my heart. And the more I avoided it, the realize I was you're silence is violence. And a lot of people have been talking about it. And again, I didn't want to, there's a lot of nuances, a lot of opinions, but that's the one thing I'll say. This is the same old thing. This Nothing has changed. They just want the land. They want the port. There's nothing else, and they will use and say whatever to justify it. But it has nothing to do.
Like I said last episode,
the bottom line is the bottom line.
We don't sell avocados.
We sell them Tulies and them bombs.
Tulies.
Yes, Lockheed Martin and and Halliburton and all that stuff. That is what we do here. And that's what all these politicians, and they all own stocks and all those big, and we didn't even have a weapon, like when we used to go to war, like in the 40s, and like Boeing and all these things, we used to convert like factories. It wasn't like a war machine well now it's money in keeping these weapons and selling these weapons. We're selling them to Ukraine. Like, look what's happening in the rest of the world. We don't talk about what's happening in Haiti. We don't talk about what's happening in Congo. Like, Haiti is getting real crazy right now. we don't care.
Bro,
we don't
talk about loans to buy the Tulies.
I guess that's it. Like, here you go, and give you a loan so you can buy the Tulies from us too. So it's like a whole thing, But war is power, and it's money more than anything. And just keep that in mind as you listen to all this stuff that's going on in the news and what's being said. This is not about God. There's no God in this.
It's never been about God.
This is not about God.
It's about money.
And that is about money. And that's all I got to say, man. Keep it casual.
Keep the supremacy casual.
I appreciate you, man. And I love, coming here and talking with you. And let's do it again soon.
Live from the MC.